This week in the Rochester Press Box from Salvador's Pizzeria at the historic Garage Door Restaurant.
Hi, I'm Doug Miller, the Rochester Lancers, alive and kicking.
And I'm John DiTullio. I'll tell you why the Buffalo Bills are wrong.
I'm Dan Moriarty, and college football is back, and we're in for the best season we've ever had.
And I'm Bill Pucko, Cal Ripken, and Jeff Schneider, linked by history. Join us on the Rochester Press Box this week. The Rochester Press Box is brought to you by Salvatore's at the Garage Door, Rochester's choice winner for Best Pizzeria, featuring Wacky Wing Wednesday and the Super Slice. It's as big as your head. The games are always on at the Garage Door, home to the Rochester Press Box. Hello everyone and welcome to the Rochester Press Box here from Salvador's Pizzeria at the historic Garage Door Restaurant. I'm Bill Pucko and I'm flanked with WHTK's two top guns, John DiTullio and Dan Moriarty. Guys, thanks for joining us. And it's our pleasure to bring back, who was the very first guest as we started the show in the Garage Door about a year ago, Doug Miller, who is now the president of soccer operations of the Rochester Lancers, who live. How'd you pull this off?
Well, it wasn't just me. It was a combined effort of many people. But, to make a long story short, the last 3 weeks have been a roller coaster ride. We're happy to say that we're moving forward. We've got all our ducks in a row. Players are coming back.
But you didn't lose anybody in the meanwhile. You had a month in there.
Yeah, it was like I said, a roller coaster ride. It was more so. I got a text from Sam about 3 weeks ago saying, "Hey, there's a lot of frustration with many different things."
Soccer Sam.
Soccer Sam, and I got the text and I was disappointed, but I was like, "Hey, this is indoor soccer. This is how it usually is. Come around this time." And I went home after I told my kids. My wife had to tell my kids that we weren't moving forward, and my daughter came up to me and said, "Daddy saved my Lancers." And my youngest daughter is a huge fan. They dance for the Junior Lancer Dancers, and they really are of that culture. And so I texted Sam, got him on the phone, and said, "Hey, listen, I know you need a helping hand. My business is going well. Let me help you. I'm in the soccer business." And that's kind of how it started, the ball rolling. And now today, we're looking to have a press conference Wednesday of next week, and hopefully good things happen.
John, I can hear you when he tells that story. If your kids tell you to do something, you just do it, right?
I think it's, my daughter's here while we're taping the show. She loves going to those games. I think the Lancers are an important part of our sports landscape here. This is the name Lancers, and the fact that going to a game, being entertained maybe a couple nights during the week, or we get down to about 2 or 3 games a year, we love it. So kudos for Sammy for starting and bringing back the Lancers, but more importantly for Doug and his partners keeping them here. I think they're important.
How do you feel about the whole Lancer experience? I know you've been to games.
Yeah, well, it's fun, and it's a different brand of soccer. And I know now, with coming off a World Cup, Women's World Cup is going to be coming up pretty soon. Soccer, it's right now, soccer is just in the forefront of the sports world. It's been cool to see it explode, and this is a different brand of soccer, a different way for people to go and enjoy and experience the sport.
Guys who were brought up playing the outdoor game as you were in it with obviously a superstar with the Rhinos for so long. How long did it take you to really warm up to the indoor game?
Actually, for me, it was reverse. My first professional contract was with the Baltimore Blast back in 1991. And I grew when I went to college at Loyola. That's what we did. We played indoor soccer 5-6 nights a week. So I was of the opposite breed of most, because in Baltimore we had a professional indoor team, but went back to the 70s, and so that was a prevalent game back then. And then coming out to the outdoor game in '96 really with the Rhinos when I left Cleveland to come here. So it's just a different game. It's more Americanized. It's an entertainment value as well. With the lights, the show, and Sammy does a fantastic job with that. And so we get the soccer purist, but we also get the casual fan, which is what we need.
So 2 things: will you still be playing? And secondly, Soccer Sam's name comes up a lot. While he kind of wants to take a step back, he'll still be there for advice, right?
Yeah. Well, Saving Soccer LLC is still owned by the Fantuzzo family. So they're going to still continue ownership. I've taken over as president of soccer operations, and Rich Randall has taken over as president of business operations. He's worried about that side. I'm worried about the soccer side. And Sam will always be there. He wants to sit there and get some popcorn and watch instead of having to do the daily business things where he needed a little helping hand, and that's what we were doing.
Very good. And you'll still be playing?
No, I mean that hasn't really been fully gone through because I'm coming off shoulder surgery right now. I tore my rotator cuff in the last season. I'm only 10 weeks beyond surgery, and I'm not sure where that's going to end up.
Bailing on the Buffalo Bills coming up next.
President Obama was at the Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum in Cooperstown this week.
These are drunken, young knuckleheads.
They just have too much going against them. Kelly Johnson's not the answer at first base.
I like him. This past week, I hated him. Is he the best player in the National League right now? Absolutely, 100%.
And this is such a great story, the story that keeps on giving.
There are those who look at things the way they are and ask why. I dream of things that never were and ask why not.
Welcome back. The Rochester Press Box here from Salvador's Pizzeria at the historic Garage Door Restaurant. It's Bill, John, Dan, and Doug. John, I'll go to you with this one. Your favorite topic, is it time to bail on the Buffalo Bills after what we've seen in the preseason?
Time to bail? When was I ever on board? I wasn't on any Bills bandwagon. They haven't made the playoffs since '99, right? They haven't finished above 500 in 10 years. Who in their right minds thinks that they're going to win 9 football games this year? Let me meet that person. From what you've seen, listen. Preseason doesn't mean that a whole lot to teams like Seattle, Green Bay, San Francisco, Eagles, teams that are already good, know they're good, know they're going to be in the playoffs. Preseason, at least for teams like the Bills, I think should matter. In particular, their quarterback. They're a mess. If they win 6 games, to me, that would be a great season. Wow. For what I've seen so far offensively, this is an offensive-driven league, and the Bills are boring and bad to watch. I know it's preseason. Am I overreacting? Let E.J. Manuel in this offense prove me wrong.
Danny, is it back after the draft, during the draft and at the draft? I think, contrary to what John said, I think we all thought 9 victories, playoff berth after everything that was done draft day. What happened since?
Well, as John said, I mean, it's an offensive league. It comes down to the quarterback, and that's the biggest issue on this team now. Well, they decided this week the backup quarterback wasn't good enough, so they make a move there. Who cares? E.J. Manuel has to be good enough, and he has to stay healthy, which is obviously a question in itself, too. And as John mentioned, preseason matters for the Bills because Doug Marrone put an onus on the preseason. He said it mattered. He said they're out to win these games. I mean, he was the one that went out and said that these games do mean something because we're trying to change a culture here and start winning. Well, they're not even winning in the preseason when they're the team that cares about winning in the preseason. So maybe preseason doesn't matter as much as the regular season's going to matter when they go to Chicago and take on the Bears, who are a heck of a team, by the way. It's a talented roster. I think it's going to be an incredibly frustrating season because everyone knows the talent on this team, and they're going to be held back by the most important position in sports, and that's the quarterback.
Yeah, Doug, these games that don't count, exhibition games that for you in soccer, they're friendlies, are we in danger of maybe putting a little too much stock into what we see in those games, or is what we see what we get?
Well, I think for the Buffalo Bills standpoint is they haven't been competitive during the regular season. We'll win the preseason and play your players the entire time and make sure that you're going to be competitive later. Same thing in soccer. I think every time you step on the field, you have to put your best foot forward because it's a confidence builder. There's so many things that can come out of it that you can build, for the future.
This is just me. I think this quarterback issue in the NFL is its biggest strength and its biggest weakness. It's like having a golden ticket, It drives the market, all these great quarterbacks, but it also handicaps a team like the Buffalo Bills because if you don't have that golden ticket, you can't do anything.
Danny, you look at this roster, where are they lacking? Really one position. We can poke holes at their offensive line. They've got some injuries, but it's quarterback. And they've hitched their wagon to E.J. Manuel. They believe in him. Well, they may be shown the door because of their belief in E.J. Manuel. I'm talking about Doug Marrone and Doug Whaley. 2 guys that have hitched their wagon to E.J. Manuel.
Were they trying to convince themselves on Manuel, do you think, when that happened, or did they really believe?
I would hope they believed, right? That's what they're paid to do. Scout, watch these kids play, and if that's who we believe is our guy, then draft the kid. I got to believe they were all on board. I got to believe there was an entire consensus. If they didn't, they got bigger problems at one Bills draft.
And they're managing short term, right? Because with an ownership change, You can't afford to think 2 years down the road. Everything is now, right?
Well, and they know, as John said, they know how important it is for him to be the guy. They showed that in their actions by going out and trading up to get Sammy Watkins. They hired a quarterback coach in the offseason. They've done all these different things to make sure he has all the tools necessary to do it on the field. But it's really up to E.J. Manuel at this point.
Boy, that exhibition game was so horrible. I keep thinking, maybe we're missing something. Maybe there's something there, but I don't see it
Prove
either.
us wrong. Don't we all want to be proven wrong on E.J. Manuel, except you? Because I know you're maybe the only guy in Western New York in his corner.
Yeah, but it's rose-colored glasses. Like it or not, when we return. Welcome back. Rochester Press Box here from Salvador's Pizzeria at the historic Garage Door Restaurant. Like it or not, Doug, Landon Donovan being invited back to play for the national team for a game.
It's awesome. I think he deserves the respect. I think he was left out of a roster that he should have been there, in Brazil. I think if the U.S. had him on the roster, it might have played out a little differently. He's the most decorated international player for the United States. And to show him the respect and to bring him back, I think it's a ticket that I would want to go and buy and see.
Hard to overstate how important he was historically to not Rochester, but the United States soccer.
Yeah, I mean, this guy, put us on the map. I mean, you think about it, he scored more international goals than Ronaldo and Rooney. So, I mean, think about on the international stage in the World Cup. So, for him, I think it's, out of respect. I thought it was a publicity stunt, when they took him off the roster to get everybody to start talking about the U.S., and then he would have been invited back. But again, Josie goes down in the first game, and we don't have a striker. Clint Dempsey now has to move up forward. It makes, you have to shift, and we did really well there, but I think we could have done better with him.
I'm not a big fan of negative publicity stunts.
Oh, but I think Dougie's right. He is the face of American soccer, at least for now.
John, like
Or was.
the Yankees' chances in the pennant races as we're starting to wind things down.
They're not going to win the division, but I think that they should be, despite the rank near last in hitting in the American League. They're pitching somewhere in the middle. They get Tanaka back. Pineda's pitched pretty well. Robertson has had a couple implosions, but the bullpen is pretty good. I like the additions that they've made. I think if you're a Yankee fan, you hope that the Royals tank in September, the Tigers win the Central, and then you got to fend off Seattle for that second wild card spot. But I think that's what you got to hope, because the Tigers, the A's, and Angels are both in. So really, you got to try to fight off Seattle and probably Kansas City for that wild card spot. And why not? How about a one-game playoff? Tanaka versus Hernandez in the wild card. Man, that is must-see TV.
Absolutely. Beyond where they finished the standings, though, this whole Tanaka thing is fascinating, is that he opted not to have surgery. All these guys that jumped to have surgery, if he comes back strong, what does that say about all these guys who went under the knife?
Yeah, well, he got lucky in the fact that it wasn't a complete tear. It was a partial tear, because I asked Will Carroll about this. He said a guy like Adam Wainwright pitched a number of years with a partial tear in his elbow. So it is something you can pitch through. He's not necessarily like a ticking time bomb where it's one of those things where every time he goes out there, you got to worry about whether or not his elbow is going to give. But we saw it with, Harvey. He went out there and tried to pitch through it, didn't work, and had to out for the surgery.
So he could still be an impact player down the stretch.
Could be.
That'll really be interesting. Danny, like it or not, Alan Branch leaves Buffalo with $3 million in his pocket and almost gave us nothing this year.
Well, it seems like he got comfortable after signing that extension. He signed an extension back in December. At that time, it was Mike Pettin as the D coordinator, not Jim Schwartz. Mike Pettin obviously now in Cleveland. So he wasn't necessarily seen as a scheme fit with Jim Schwartz. He was upset about that. Doesn't show up to voluntary team activities in the offseason. Then when he shows up to training camp, he comes in out of shape and overweight, doesn't pass his conditioning test. So I think he got comfortable when he signed that extension. You mentioned the $3.1 million signing bonus, which he walks away with. And then in the preseason, the deepest spot on the roster of the Buffalo Bills is interior defensive line. Guys like Landon Cohen have stepped up. Corbin Bryant stepped up. Stephon Charles has stepped up. He was left on the third team. So he wasn't cut because of his arrest. That was a reason to cut him. He wasn't going to make this team anyway. because again, he got too comfortable after signing that contract.
If you're his general manager, Doug, don't you try for a breach of contract somehow, get your $3 million back?
I would. I mean, especially if there's some negative and breaches of contract. But
He didn't try. What gets me is he didn't try.
I think it becomes an effort in how much you're going to pay the lawyers to fight this, and how he pays the lawyers, and the lawyers end up making the money, and you guys lose, and you're still going to end up paying them. And that's, with Major League Sports, this is what it's come down to.
I was told by a former NFL head coach, watch when the player gets the money. Watch what happens to their production. He goes, it's a trend. You get a few players, once they get the money, their career ascends. Some, typically most, will descend after they get the money.
This is one of the worst examples I think I've ever seen, though. It's just awful. We finish up when we return. Welcome back to the historic Garage Door Restaurant here, Salvador's Pizzeria in the Rochester Press Box. Time now for unfinished business. John.
It just blows my mind that guys who are paid a lot of money to figure out or make decisions, personnel, quarterbacks, can't seem to get it right. That's been the story of the Buffalo Bills now since Jim Kelly really retired after the 1996 season. When I look at just the AFC East, Tom Brady, Ben Aries, a future Hall of Famer. His backups are young guys. Ryan Mallett, you got Garoppolo. You look at what Ryan Tannehill's in Miami. He has a veteran backup in Matt Moore. You go with the New York Jets. They've got a young quarterback in Geno Smith, who I think is going to make the next step. He has a veteran backup. You look around the league, most quarterbacks that are young have a veteran backup. And most quarterbacks that are old, that have been in the league quite a bit, like Aaron Rodgers, they have a young backup. And here are the Buffalo Bills with, prior to a few days ago, had 3 young quarterbacks. I know they brought in Jordan Palmer, who's 30 years old, but he's young. He's only played in 4 games. And I learned the other day that Brian Moorman has more passing yards than Jordan Palmer has in his career. The game is about the quarterback. And in this case, with the Buffalo Bills, a young quarterback, they need a veteran backup. I can go back 10 years ago with Ben Roethlisberger when he took over for the injured Tommy Maddox, who was a veteran guy. They brought in another veteran guy in Charlie Batch, just in case Ben fell on his face. Well, you know what? E.J. Manuel may be ascending, or you know what? He may be ready to fall on his face. And what? Jeff Toole is going to be there to pick up the Bills? I don't think so.
There's a whole round of cuts still left to be made. Is there a chance somebody that interests them falls there?
No. They would have done it by now, wouldn't they? They had all off season. What blows my mind is that they think Jordan Palmer is better than Thad Lewis, who won 2 games last year, who's been in this system. Don't tell me they brought Palmer in to pick his brain about Jay Cutler. If that's the reason why, then I would fire everybody at One Bills Drive. I would fire everyone if that's the sole reason they signed Jordan Palmer. Hey, what do you think Jay Cutler is going to be doing against us? You got to be kidding me if that's the reason.
Mr. Miller.
As September approaches and the kids are going back to school, some people say they're thankful to get their kids going back to school. I'm thankful that the Rochester Lancers are back again for the 2014-15 season. I'm thankful to the Fantuzzo family, for allowing us to continue on. I think that there's a culture that's been built. I think there's a culture that's going to continue to grow, and I'm happy to be a part of it. I'm thankful for the sponsors that have come back on board, and to this community for all the support that they've put, for the Rochester Lancers. They were here in the 70s. They're back here in the 2000s, and I want to make sure that they're here come 2020. So thank you very much for your support, and I look forward to seeing you at our first game this year.
All right, and we thank you for being the catalyst to help make all this happen. Nice job, Doug.
Thank you.
What do you got?
Well, as Doug mentioned, September coming up, and with September coming up, that means football finally getting underway. Now, it also means summer coming to an end, but it's nice when you have football to fall back on. Well, we were going to have football every weekend now until February 1st, which will be, of course, the Super Bowl. Something we'll have for the first time this year, though, a college football playoff, something that I think people have been clamoring for years, for whatever reason. College football was incredibly stubborn in putting this system in place. They're finally doing it this year, and I think it's going to be a huge success. Such a success and such a moneymaker for the NCAA and college football. I think they're eventually going to go to 8 teams, but at least they cave to the pressure finally, because I think that this is the thing that makes the most sense in order for college football to have a legit champion. I don't know why it took so long, but now that they have it, I think we're eventually going to have 8 teams.
You know, this is like 1966 again when they played for the first Super Bowl, and we mark all our NFL now records from that. This will be the first year of college football now as we will know it. Cal Ripken turned 54 this week. How about that? Ripken played for the 1981 Rochester Red Wings. It was my good fortune to actually have arrived in town to see him play. That was my first baseball season here. I also remember when he left. It was in August. I think it was August 8th of that same season. When he left, he jumped into a car, and I saw him and Jeff Schneider leave the ballpark together. It happened that I was at Silver Stadium because they had a baseball card show that day on the day that those two got called up. Ripken, of course, went on to a first ballot Hall of Fame career, broke Lou Gehrig's record incredibly. When I looked this up, I could hardly believe it. He broke Gehrig's consecutive game streak by 500 games. Pretty incredible. But Ripken goes on to that career. Jeff Schneider pitched 11 games that season for the Baltimore Orioles, and that's all he got out of his major league career. 2 years later, he was out of baseball. Fate can be pretty fickle. We record the Rochester Press Box here at the Garage Door Restaurant every Wednesday afternoon at 12:30. We invite you to come down, have a little lunch, meet the guys. John, good as always.
Really great action.
Danny, you've had a great run.
Thank you.
And Doug, congratulations again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.